I lost everything, but on the streets, I found a new life. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It was like watching a beautiful painting slowly drown in a storm. I felt helpless. My heart raced, my palms were clammy. The sirens wailed behind me, echoing through the narrow streets like ghosts, whispering of dreams shattered. I was alone. Then there was my mother. Always the calm in my chaos, gone in an instant. The phone call had torn me apart. Her voice my anchor, slipping away, and I was left drifting. No more warm hugs or whispered reassurances. Just emptiness. The fight with my best friend, Jess, had been brutal. Words thrown like knives. Betrayal hung heavy between us. I stood there, trembling and raw, nerves frayed. Now she wouldn't even look my way. It was like the sun disappeared, and all that was left was a cold void. I wandered the streets now, lost and broken. Each corner I turned felt more ominous than the last. I watched, wide-eyed, as the world moved around me, oblivious to my pain. A cat darted past a flash of fur, like hope chasing shadows. I clutched the small backpack that contained the last remnants of my old life. A tattered blanket, a few clothes, and a picture of my family. People brushed by, eyes glued to their phones, faces indifferent. I felt invisible. The city buzzed with life, but I felt like a ghost haunting the places I once knew. The smell of fresh bread wafted from a nearby bakery. My stomach growled a reminder of my hunger, but I had no money. Just the bitter taste of despair. Then I saw him. An old man sitting on the sidewalk, his beard stained with time, eyes distant but wise. Our gazes locked. In that fleeting moment, the world paused. His presence felt magnetic. He stared at me, and it was as if he could see the pieces of my shattered soul. "What are you searching for?" he whispered, voice raspy like dry leaves. I didn't know how to answer. All I felt was a longing deep inside, an ache that wouldn't go away. "Happiness," I finally said, my own voice sounding foreign. He chuckled, a soft, knowing sound. "You might just find it where you least expect." That stuck with me. Could I really discover joy amidst the ruins? I had lost everything, but perhaps there was more to be found beneath the surface. Just then, a commotion erupted as people rushed past, shouting, their faces twisted in shock. I turned, curiosity piqued a small crowd gathering, anticipation thick in the air. "What's happening?" I felt compelled to ask, heart racing again. "No one knows," someone yelled back, panic lacing their words. I edged closer. What lay ahead might change everything. My breath hitched, an electric tingle danced along my spine. The mystery surrounded me, tugging me deeper like a tidal wave. What was I about to discover? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The crowd swelled, curiosity morphing into a nervous frenzy. I was drawn into it, a moth to a flame, each shout and gasp igniting a flicker of hope inside me. I pushed through a mass of bodies, each face reflecting a different emotion: fear, a strange excitement, and a hunger for answers palpable in the air. Then, I saw it. An overturned bicycle at the center, a splash of vibrant colors on the gray pavement. Beside it, a young girl knelt, her hands trembling as she picked up scattered toys: rubber ducks, a small dinosaur, a teddy bear. I could see the tear tracks on her dusty cheeks, her trembling lips forming words of distress that were lost beneath the din around her. I felt something stir within me, a visceral pull towards this little girl, waving against the ocean of apathy. I wanted to reach out, to comfort her, to let her know she wasn't alone in the chaos. But before I could take a step, the commotion surged again. A woman in a panic shouted about how the girl's mother had run into the street after a wayward dog, but no one seemed to care enough to help. My own heart raced as I instinctively jumped in. I approached the girl, kneeling beside her. "Hey there," I said softly, keeping my voice steady. "Can I help you?" Her eyes met my big, round, and clearly filled with fear, and for a moment it felt like our small bubble existed amidst the whirlwind. She nodded, managing a small, hiccuping breath. Together, we gathered her belongings. "What's your name?" I asked, hoping to draw her out of her shell. "Lily," she whispered. "Mom's gonna come back, right?" "Of course she will," I told her, squeezing her small hand reassuringly. "Let's just stay together until she gets back." Just behind me, I could sense eyes rolling as the crowd began to dissipate, some taking pictures, others muttering about how this was just another day in this city. But for me, it was more than that. It was a moment that sparked something within, a shred of purpose battling against the shadows of my despair. As we waited, Lily and I talked. I shared fragments of my life, the warm embraces of my mother, lazy afternoons spent playing with friends. She shared stories of her favorite toys, her voice growing steadier with each word. In her innocence, I discovered a flicker of the joy I desperately sought. As the minutes dragged on, the inevitable pang of dread crept back in. What if her mother didn't come back? What if I lost this small connection that had become a lifeline? Just then, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned to see Jess standing there, her eyes darting between the street and me, concern etched into her features. "What are you doing here?" she snapped, but there was no venom in her voice, only disbelief. "You can't just—" I held up a hand, interrupting her. "I'm helping her." Her gaze shifted to Lily, who now clutched a dinosaur as she kept glancing towards the street. Jess' expression softened, perhaps seeing a reflection of the girl she once was. "I didn't know," she began, trailing off as she seemed to reconsider her anger. In that moment, the world around me blurred away, and what mattered was the bond of compassion we all could share. Maybe, just maybe, the pain of loss had a way of stitching threads of unexpected kindness together, but it required vulnerability, a leap of faith I wasn't sure I was ready to take. Suddenly, a voice broke through the thick silence, a familiar shout piercing the air. "Lily!" A frantic woman, breathless and disheveled, rushed towards us. Relief washed over Lily's face, the fear melting away as her mother swept her into her arms. "Mom, I was scared," Lily wailed, clinging tightly, and I felt the warmth of that reunion, a bittersweet balm against my own heartache. But just as I stood to step back into the crowd, Jess' hand caught my wrist. "Wait!" "What?" I replied, confused, wanting to retreat away from the emotion of the moment. "About what happened between us, can we talk? Please?" I stared at her, at the unshed tears in her eyes. Part of me wanted to turn my back, but another part hoped that perhaps this her reaching out was that flicker of hope I had been waiting for. As I pulled away from the chaos surrounding us, I felt a strange sense of balance, like I was teetering on the edge of something profound. The streets still felt foreign, but that moment lingered with me, an echo of warmth in a world so quick to forget. "Okay," I said quietly, and with that, our journey took a new turn, a new challenge merging with the unresolved pain. But even as I faced this new horizon, a flicker of doubt lingered within me, whispering, what if this was just another storm on the horizon, ready to drown me again? The streets buzzed with an undertone of noise, laughter spreading through the wary crowd like an unsettling whisper among them. I walked alongside Jess, my heart echoing the thrum of uncertainty. We passed food carts and festive banners, a stark contrast to the heaviness in the air as we navigated this new terrain of emotions. where wounds remained unhealed and old resentments hung like shadows. Do you remember our last argument? Jess asked, her voice wavering as we found a quieter corner, away from prying eyes. I never wanted you to think I didn't care. I glanced at her, a flicker of the past igniting the unease in my chest. That's exactly what I thought, I replied, the weight of our history pressing between us like a thick fog. Jess stepped closer, her fingers fidgeting nervously. I was scared. I saw you spiraling, and instead of reaching out, I pushed you away. I thought it would help you find your way back, but I only drove you further into the darkness. My heart ached at her words, pulling me back to long nights when I wept alone, haunted by the specter of isolation. And that's what you did, I murmured, memories swirling with pain. You turned your back. Silence enveloped us, a crackling tension that reminded me of the crowd's earlier roar. As I looked down at the cracks in the pavement, a gust of wind brought the scent of summer, sharp and bittersweet. But in that fragrant air, I also caught a hint of decay off dreams long forgotten. What if I told you I want to change? Jess whispered, stepping even closer. Not just for you, but for me too. I want to face my own fears. I felt a pulse of vulnerability bridge the distance, but I wasn't sure if I had the courage to take her hand. I don't know if I can trust that, I admitted. The last time, it hurt too much, but I'm trying even if it's messy, she replied, a tear escaping down her cheek before she could wipe it away. Please, give me a chance. In that moment, a flicker of hope ignited, tying our shared past to a potential future. I wanted to believe in the power of redemption, to trust that this could be the beginning of something new. But the knife edge of doubt still jabbed at my heart. Just as I opened my mouth to respond, we were interrupted by a loud crash from across the street, a sound that shattered the fragile connection between us. My head snapped toward the source seat was a group of teenagers, their laughter morphing into taunts as they knocked over a pair of old, faded chairs being used by an elderly man who had been painting a vibrant mural on the brick wall. I felt my stomach churn. The man looked up, his paintbrush frozen midair, eyes widening in disbelief and pain. Without thinking, my feet propelled me towards the chaos, the tight bonds of hope and fear knotting in my chest as I stepped into the fray once again. Hey! I shouted, my voice commanding the attention of the gang. What are you doing? They turned to me, their bravado faltering for a second. The air quivered with tension as they assessed the situation, sizing me up. Jess followed close behind, her presence igniting sparks of strength beside me. It's just some old guy, one of them laughed, taking a step toward me with flared arrogance. What does it matter? It matters because he's a person, I replied, my voice steady, though my heart pounded. Just like you. Just like me. I could feel the crowd begin to gather again, this time drawn by a different energy, the potential of solidarity, the unexpected bravery that flickered to life as I stood my ground. The elderly artist, whom I hadn't yet met, was studying me, his paint-stained hands still holding onto his craft. Leave him alone, Jess added, stepping beside me, her trembling resolve hardening. For a moment, it felt like we were standing on the precipice of something monumental. The boys exchanged glances, their confidence wavering. But then, one of the larger teens stepped forward, his jaw set defiantly. Or what? You'll call the cops? No, I said slowly, deliberately. We just want to remind you that kindness matters. What's so funny about hurting someone for no reason? A heartbeat. Passed, thick with uncertainty. Just as I thought we might create a shift, throwing kindness into the fiery chain of bitterness, the larger guy roared with laughter and shoved me aside. The crowd surged, gasps blending with shouts as chaos erupted anew. In that moment, the harsh truth crashed down upon me. I had reached for hope, for a connection, but despair laughed back, mocking my attempts to change the course of a seemingly indifferent world. The teenagers resumed their taunts, knocking the chairs and tipping over paint cans. which splattered across the sidewalk, a mural drenched in chaos as laughter filled the air. I felt Jess grasp my arm, her grip strong but uncertain, and watched as the artist stepped back, hurt lining his face. "This isn't about you," I breathed, dread coiling in the pit of my stomach. But just then, something unexpected happened. A woman in her 30s, with a determined look, shouldered her way through the crowd. "Stop it!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. As she reached the elderly man, she knelt beside him, a protector against the tide of vitriol. "Your art matters," she said softly, her words embracing the artist with warmth. "Keep painting. Don't let them steal your joy." As the crowd began to murmur in hesitation, a few began to applaud, echoing the woman's defiance. The tide began to shift, connections forming in unexpected places. But even as I felt a flicker of hope again, my heart raced with the knowledge that storms never truly calmed. Anguish slithered along my spine, whispering that hope was never a singular path but a winding journey filled with obstacles, a journey that threatened to engulf me if I let it. And as the police sirens began to wail in the distance, signaling the impending chaos to escalate, I couldn't help but wonder, was this truly a chance to heal, or simply the preamble to another heart-wrenching struggle? The chaos of the crowd rumbled like thunder around me, peeling away the layers of my hope like the paint on the sidewalk. I turned to Jess, searching her face for a glimmer of reassurance, but her expression mirrored the tempest within me, conflicted, torn between the pain of our past and the uncertain promise of what lay ahead. "Are we doing the right thing?" I asked her, my voice barely loud enough to cut through the din of laughter and jeers. She glanced at me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, a storm of emotion swirling just beneath the surface. "I don't know," she whispered back, the weight of uncertainty heavy in her tone. "But we have to try, don't we?" I nodded, feeling the tremor in her voice resonate deep within. The unexpected kindness of the woman defending the elderly artist had sparked something within me, but now a question loomed larger than any moment of courage I had previously clung to. If we fought to help others, would we find a way to mend ourselves in the process, or would we just face deeper scars? The sirens grew louder, and the attacking laughter faded away as some of the teenagers, realizing they had pushed too far, began to retreat into the shadows. But the faces in the crowd had shifted. People were no longer just passive spectators. The woman knelt beside the artist, her presence grounding him, and for the first time, I saw the glimmers of solidarity in the faces of those watching. I felt my heart surge with a sudden fervor, igniting a determination within me that I hadn't felt in ages. "We can't let them just walk away," I said, a burst of energy propelling the words out. Jess caught my eye, the raw hope shining in hers, giving me the push I needed. As the police arrived, a wave of relief rippled through me as though I were a boat adrift, finally catching a glimmer of land on the horizon. "Everyone," I shouted, my voice rising above the noise, "don't let this moment pass you by. This isn't just about one man's art. It's about reminding ourselves that we matter, each of us." The crowd began to stir, and I pushed through, standing beside the woman who had breathed life into the artist with her words. "We need to support one another," I continued, "because if we don't, we're only one step away from becoming like them." Jess joined me, standing shoulder to shoulder as the artist turned to us with an expression of gratitude, his eyes wet with unshed tears, the remnants of a pain I recognized all too well. "Your art matters," I repeated, my voice steady. "Let's turn this into something beautiful." And then, something inexplicable happened. A few voices in the crowd began to echo my sentiment. "Yes!" a man shouted from the back, his face lit with the glow of shared purpose. "We can help." The ripple of acceptance spread like wildfire as more people stepped forward, mingling their pain with the artist's suffering, forming a tapestry woven from shared humanity. I watched in disbelief as more joined the artist's side, helping him gather his discarded paint cans and brushes, a small act of defiance against the sea of cruelty. But in the midst of this heartwarming uprising, unease coiled in my stomach. What would this unity mean for Jess and me? Could our fragile steps towards reconciliation withstand the trials of the world we face together? Suddenly, the police officers stepped into the fray, their presence both reassuring and imposing. I felt my pulse quicken. Tensions were high, and while I sensed the crowd coalescing into a force of compassion, the threat of discord lingered like a specter. Everyone needs to step back. One officer called out, a stern look spreading across his face. There's no need for this hostility. Hostility? I countered, taking a step forward, again propelled by that same force that had ignited my earlier bravery. We're not trying to cause trouble. We want to lift people up, not tear them down. Step aside, sir, he replied, eyeing me warily. This is our job. You need to let us handle it. And then I saw it out of the corner of my eye. I caught a glimpse of a woman at the edge of the crowd, her silhouette familiar yet obscured by the chaos. My heart plummeted. Martha? I breathed, recognizing her instantly. She'd once been a friend and ally in my darkest days until she vanished without a trace, her disappearance a wound that had festered within me for so long. I hadn't seen her in nearly a year, and the weight of unanswered questions crashed over me like a wave. I surged through the crowd, breaking free from the entangled emotions binding me to the moment. Martha! I shouted, desperation lacing my voice as I strained to catch her gaze. In that instant, I could almost hear her laughter, the memory of our friendship rising like a ghost in the back of my mind. Her mouth moved, forming words I couldn't hear over the noise, and then she turned away, slipping back into the throng of people. A flood of confusion washed over me, mixing with the overwhelming surge of hope and despair. Had she really returned? Why would she hide from me now? Wait! I cried, but Jess stepped in front of me, her expression one of growing concern. You can't chase after her right now. We need to support the artist first. This moment I can't just let her go again. I interjected, heart racing as I scanned the crowd for any sign of Martha. The connections I thought I'd begun to weave around Jess and this artist felt suddenly fragile, threatening to unravel beneath the weight of what was lost and what had yet to be restored. Let's just breathe, she said softly, trying to ground me, but my heart was pounding like a drum. With a heavy heart, I pulled away and pushed back against the growing swell of the crowd, feeling disconnected and raw, unsure if I could ever bridge the gap between the bonds I was desperate to nurture and the shadows still lurking in my past. And as chaos bubbled around me, one sobering thought pierced through the fog of confusion. What if reclaiming my past meant risking everything I'd just begun to piece together? Would I lose Jess too, if I plunged into the depths of my former life? In a world teetering on the brink of unity and conflict, I wondered would I find my way back to Martha, and what would that mean for Jess and me? With that question hanging heavily, I struggled to redefine my path in the twilight of hope and despair. The crowd around me surged, an unpredictable wave of humanity pushing and pulling, but I felt anchored by the thought of Martha. As if sensing my internal battle, Jess tightened her grip on my arm. You need to think about what you're doing, she urged, her voice strained. If you chase her now, you could lose everything we've fought for. Her words struck a chord, igniting a flicker of clarity amidst the growing chaos. But I couldn't shake the image of Martha. Her absent presence felt like a thorn in my side, a painful reminder of something left unfinished. I took a breath, willing myself to stay grounded, torn between moments of hope and vestiges of guilt. Can we do both? I asked, the question spilling from my lips before I could fully consider it. Help the artist, support this movement, and find Martha? Jess hesitated, studying me with those familiar yet cautious eyes. Maybe, if you think that's what you need. But promise me you won't lose sight of why we're here. We are trying to create a change. Her sincerity pierced through my confusion, and I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I nodded, knowing I had to balance my past with our shared present. Okay, I said softly, let's make this count. But I can't let her slip away again. As we turned back to the artist, I felt a mix of determination and fear swirling within me. The crowd had grown into a living entity, infused with strength, but also an unmistakable tension. I began to chant along with the others, voices rising in a crescendo that challenged the dissonance around us. Art is power. Art is humanity. Each repetition fortified my resolve, drawing me closer to the artist's side. With each silence broken by our collective roar, I discovered unexpected connection, faces I'd never seen, but understood all the same. Here we stood, united by shared experiences, painted by wounds that time had yet to heal, but in the depths of the revelry, I still felt that tight knot of unease. The police's stern stance helped maintain order, but in this delicate moment, how much longer could they hold that line without escalating tensions? As if reading my thoughts, Jess leaned in closer, her breath warm against my cheek. Just keep watching the crowd. Let's not push them away, let's embrace their energy. I nodded, grateful for her steadiness. Suddenly, the tension cracked like a fragile bone. An officer barked an order for people to back off, and a shiver ran through the group as anger rippled at the edges. Faces once alight with hope darkened with frustration, the air thickening with vulnerability. Stay together, Jess shouted, her voice rising above the tumult. Remember why we're here. But just as we steeled ourselves, I glimpsed her Martha again. There she was, caught in the crossfire of our cause and our fight for each other. I saw her take a deep breath, her eyes flicking back to me, a mixture of recognition and fear. Was she afraid of me? Or herself? Martha! I called desperately, but the roar of the crowd swallowed my voice. Instinct pulled my feet forward, but Jess grasped my arm firmly. No! She shook her head, pleading in her eyes. I couldn't take my gaze off Martha, a ghost from my past who had turned into a beacon of unresolved questions. Her presence ignited my anger, joy, confusion, everything. She's my friend. I heard myself shouting, the words dripping with urgency. But before I could break free from Jess' grasp, the anger simmering in the crowd erupted. A protester shouted obscenities, the police responded with stark warnings, and chaos unfolded like a cruel joke. Suddenly, a scuffle broke out in the direction of my past. People pushed against each other, a balance teetering precariously around us. Are you okay? Jess shouted, desperation creeping into her voice as she pulled me closer. I can't lose her again, I replied, feeling the space between us widen with every heartbeat. And just as I resolved to break free, a deafening crash echoed through the air, a loud noise that jolted the crowd into panic. The distant sound of shattering glass, followed by fears echoing, unleashed the fragile barrier of solidarity wed. Built, everyone back! Officers bellowed, confusion painted across their faces as they struggled to regain control. The crowd's sense of unity splintered. Some started to flee while others pushed forward, anger and hope colliding under the harsh glare of the streetlights. Stay together! Jess shouted again, yet my eyes were locked on Martha as she hesitated at the edge of the chaos, a bridge between my past and present. For a split second, I caught the shimmer of her eyes, glossy with unspoken burdens. He'll be back! I shouted to Jess, bolstered by an instinct I couldn't deny. But even as those words left my lips, I felt uncertainty grip my heart. Was leaving her really the answer, or was I only inviting defeat into my already fractured soul? Risking everything I had begun to build, I dashed through the throng, guided by an emotional compass that felt equally exhilarating and terrifying. I was determined to reclaim what had once been lost, even if it meant dismantling the fragile connections I had forged with Jess. I called Martha as the distance closed, but before I could reach her, she melted away further into the crowd, swallowed whole by the frothing sea of people, and as I lost sight of her again, a new sense of fear washed over me. What was it I stood to gain? Reunion, closure, or revelation? My breath quickened, uncertainty weighing heavy on my chest. A darkness loomed over me, not only because of what I'd lost, but because in the heart of this chaos, a revelation stirred quietly like a secret, waiting for the right moment to unfold. But as the cacophony grew and I lost my footing in the chaos, one thing became crystal clear: finding Martha might dismantle everything I had built, or offer me a path to the light I sought. And with those thoughts, circling like sharks, I plunged deeper into the throng, uncertain of what awaited me at the end of this desperate journey. The jostle of the crowd heaved around me like a living entity, chaotic yet relentless. I kept pushing forward, my heart racing in time with the turmoil unfolding all around. Each step felt like a fight against gravity, an urgency pulling me toward the elusive figure of Martha. My vision blurred and sharpened, the frenzied faces of fellow protesters morphed into ghostly specters, lost to me in my quest. Martha! I gasped as I reached a small clearing, a momentary refuge from the crushing mass. The shouts and chaos echoed distantly, like an uninvited storm on the horizon. My mind raced with memories of her laughter, the warmth of our friendship. And yet, I knew it was a friendship weighed down by misunderstanding and pain, a foundation built upon what we had failed to communicate. As I steadied myself, a hand gripped my wrist. I turned to find a stranger, a woman with vibrant blue hair and eyes that sparkled with raw energy. "You've got to breathe, you know," she said, her voice a steady anchor amidst the chaos. "If you keep chasing her, you'll only get lost along the way." "I can't lose her again," I replied, my voice catching somewhere between desperation and determination. "I have to find her." The woman nodded, an understanding glimmering in her gaze. "I get it. But listen, sometimes the heart speaks loudest when there's silence around. You're looking for connection amidst the noise, trying to reclaim something that may not exist anymore." Her words wrapped around me, a bittersweet balm to my frayed emotions. For a fleeting moment, I considered her insight, but the thought of letting go left a chilling void. "I have to try," I whispered, as I turned to plunge back into the throng. With a determined heart, I pushed through those tangled bodies, weaving and bobbing until I caught sight of a familiar silhouette at the far side of the street. My breath hitched, a flicker of hope renewed. There she was, her back turned toward me. "Martha!" I shouted again, more forcefully this time. My call sliced through the cacophony with an intensity that seemed to hush the surrounding chaos for a brief instant. She turned, and our eyes met. Recognition surged between us, mingled with a storm of unspoken words. The world around us faded into a soft blur. It was just the two of us, caught in a moment, suspended in time amid a whirlwind of emotions. But as my pulse raced in excitement, a figure emerged beside her, one I hadn't expected to see. Nathan. He had been a looming shadow in the backdrop of our lives, a magnetic force that always seemed to pull Martha away when I dared to reach for her. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, as a wave of jealousy crashed over the remnants of my resolve. Martha's expression flickered, caught somewhere between surprise and unease as she took a step back, her gaze flickering between Nathan and me. "I didn't expect to see you here," she murmured, her voice edged with uncertainty. "Neither did I," I replied, struggling to contain a sudden surge of frustration and dread. "Why are you with him?" Nathan stepped closer, possessively placing an arm around Martha's shoulder, a gesture that ignited a firestorm of anger within me. "Just trying to keep her safe, man," he said smoothly, his tone dripping with condescension. "She made her choice. Safe?" My heart raced with indignation. "You think this place is safe? You think it's safe to hide behind your entitlement?" Martha opened her mouth as if to protest, but the cold tension snapped instantly. The crowd roared again, a tidal wave of voices crashing like thunder, as another struggle erupted not far from us. "Let's go, Martha." "We don't need this noise," Nathan urged, his grip tightening. "Martha, please." I strained, the weight of desperation clawing at my throat. You don't have to choose between us. She's not a trophy to be won, you know. Nathan shot back, his stance aggressive. In that moment, the world around us started to collapse under the pressure of emotions vying for control. I felt raw, exposed, and torn apart as the demons of my past rose to wreak havoc among us. Her eyes, those familiar, tragic pools, reflected the anguish of the moment, slicing through the noise and showing me the aching truth. She was lost, and so was I. Let her decide, Nathan, the blue-haired woman's voice broke in, standing defiantly at my side. You can't dictate what she feels. But before I could move forward, the panic surged again, sending the crowd into a frenzy, an all-consuming wave sweeping us apart. The blend of shouting, fear, and adrenaline created a charged atmosphere, dulling the edges of clarity I so desperately sought. Martha! I shouted again, longing tangled in the thicket of chaos. But as the throng pressed and pulled, a sudden force knocked me off balance, tumbling me back into the frantic sea. Martha! I cried one last time, but my voice vanished into the cacophony. I struggled to regain my footing as images of her dashed away consumed me. The sense of hope I had briefly clung to fractured like glass underfoot. Once again, I was standing in the ruins of what should have been, the lines blurred between love, yearning, and fear. And as the darkness of uncertainty draped over my shoulders again, I caught a glimpse of something brighter, a flicker of light, a strange and powerful spirit that dared to defy the chaos. It pulsed in the hearts of those around me, connection, solidarity, and resilience that was slowly rising to meet this moment of turmoil. But the revelation that pierced the depths of my thoughts was both exhilarating and horrifying. To seek Martha was to pull the threads of my life apart, as unearthing the truth may unravel everything I had built since our parting. With Martha's uncertain fate tangled amidst the tides of turmoil, I could feel my heart pounding, caught between the realms of past regrets and the hope of what lay before me. And I steeled myself for the unknown, even as the darkness whispered the answer would soon rise to meet menacing truths that could either ignite a journey of healing or burn the bridges to my heart completely. As I stumbled through the crowd, the faces around me morphed into strange, distorted reflections of my own turmoil. I felt like a ghost, unanchored and drifting in a world where everything was too loud, too chaotic, and yet painfully familiar. The flickering image of Martha danced at the edges of my vision, teasing me like a feather caught in the wind, forever out of reach. I pushed forward, determined to reach her, but each moment I spent lost in the turmoil peeled back layers of my hope. Suddenly, a pushing force from behind jolted me forward, shoving me into the arms of another person. It was a young man with a kind smile and a gentle hand that steadied my stumble. "Whoa there!" he exclaimed, genuine concern tracing the lines of his face. "You okay?" For a brief moment, the kindness in his eyes pierced through my despair. "In trying to find someone," I managed to say, my words tumbling out in a rush that barely made sense even to me. "It's someone you lost," he started, his voice gentle, but before he could finish, I heard a scream nearby that set my heart racing once more. Instinctively, I pulled away, the weight of my grief dragging me back into the chaos. As I re-entered the storm, I heard faint echoes of familiar voices emerging from the thrumming energy of the crowd. A group of people had formed a protective circle, faces determined, as they stood against the backdrop of sirens and commotion. Inside the circle, I could see them arguing passionately, their words a defiant anthem amidst the frenzy. "Stand up for what matters," someone shouted, fists raised high, igniting sparks of fervor among onlookers. The energy pulsed, drawing me in, igniting a small flame of hope inside, still flickering but alive. "Together!" another voice roared, crashing over the tide of despair. And in that moment, while it felt as if life was unraveling, I realized that the people around me were not just anonymous faces, they were allies united by a common cause, a shared purpose that transcended the very chaos I was struggling against. As I drifted closer to the circle, their words washed over me, stirring something deep within. Maybe this wasn't just a protest. It was a gathering of hearts seeking connection, resilience amid the turmoil. My heart swelled with an overwhelming sense of longing to connect, to belong, to feel grounded in a world that seemed so ready to fracture. The reality of my search for Martha felt distant, a forgotten ache in the grim spectacle of unity blossoming before me. Then, through the sea of bodies, I spotted a glint of magenta flash of blue hair. My heart raced as I pushed forward, thoughts spiraling around her this time, not just through the lens of loss, but through the potential of rediscovery. The circle parted, and I made my way to the edge, catching sights of familiar faces amidst the chaos. And there she was. Martha stood at the periphery, her expression torn between confusion and resolve. She looked different, a ghost of the effortless joy I once knew. The weight of Nathan's absence had settled around her, and I could see the battle in her eyes, a desire for freedom clashing with a yearning need for safety. "Martha," I called, letting the noise fade into the background as I took a step toward her. The world fell away, leaving just the two of us on this raw, open stage. "Let's talk." Her gaze held mine, her vulnerability a mirror for my own. She whispered, uncertainty flickering behind her eyes, like a candle battling the night. Before I could take another step closer, Nathan surged into the space between us, face twisted in anger. "You need to stop this," he barked, pushing against the tide of the crowd, unyielding like a brick wall I couldn't breach. "It's not safe for you here." "You don't understand." Martha's gaze bounced between us, caught in the crossfire of an unwinnable duel. "Maybe it's not about safety," she said finally, her voice barely above a tremor. "Maybe it's time I stopped running away from everything." Her words hung in the air, suspended like the gravity between us, enveloping me in a fragile hope. I saw a spark illuminate her spirit, a resilience beneath all the pain that I desperately hoped might lead her back to me, back to herself. Just then, a cry erupted from the crowd as another wave of agitation caused people to surge, pushing us apart dramatically. I reached for her, fingers just brushing her arm as she was swept further into the mass of bodies, and I felt a cold grip of desperation slam against my chest. "Martha, don't let him win," I shouted, urgency rising in my voice like a lifeline cast to someone lost at sea. But just as she turned to look at me, a blinding flash illuminated the darkness, overwhelming and unexpected, casting shadows that danced ominously through the air. I shielded my eyes momentarily, and when I looked back, she was gone, obscured by a torrent of faces rushing past, taken by the current of chaos spiraling out of control. All I had was the silence that bore down on me after the brief explosion of light, a stillness that felt like a prayer. My heart raced as I stood alone, a singular figure in a sea of shouting voices, distant yet emphatic. Confusion swirled, tethering me to the essence of my feelings, the fire for change, the desire for connection, and the desperate need to understand. But as I turned to rejoin the fray, fueled by the thin thread of hope that remained, a haunting realization whispered in my ear: to find Martha, I may also have to confront the ghosts of my own past, setting the stage for an unfathomable truth yet to unfold. The echoes of the crowd roared like a tempest, yet all I could feel was the tightening grip of uncertainty around my chest. Each passing face contorted into a mask of emotion: fear, anger, defiance. None of it seemed to make sense anymore. I was lost, not just among the throng, but within myself, struggling against the tide of doubt that threatened to drown any remnants of hope. In the flare of that blinding light, I had reached for Martha, and in doing so, perhaps I had awakened something deeper within me. A relentless yearning bubbled to the surface. Perhaps in this chaos, I could unearth not only where she stood but also parts of myself I had long buried. As I maneuvered through the thinning crowd, an unexpected whisper of warmth caught my attention. A girl, no older than 18, stood off to the side, her worried eyes scanning the chaos. They locked with mine, and in that brief connection, her features softened. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. There was a vulnerability there, a shared fight illuminated through our fleeting gaze. "I am searching for someone," I replied, the words tasting hollow. "Have you seen a girl with blue hair?" Her face hardened, a flash of recognition passing over her features. "Martha? I think she might have gone that way." She pointed toward a nearby alley, shadowed yet inviting, as though offering solace from the noise. "You should hurry." For a heartbeat, I hesitated, half wondering if it was a mirage fueled by the chaos, but the urgent flutter in my chest pushed me forward. "Thank you," I managed, my voice a raw thread woven with gratitude. She nodded, a quiet smile breaking through her worry, and I realized that in this storm, small acts of kindness emerged like beacons. I raced down the alley, urgency propelling me past discarded scraps of paper and broken glass that laid testament to the struggles endured in silence. The world behind me muted into a distant hum, each step echoing the pulse within me, the drum for connection, for reunion. I turned the corner, breathless, and my heart lurched at the sight before me. In the dim light, Martha stood, her back turned, speaking to a figure cloaked in shadow. The world around us faded, the sounds of the street dulled, and became a faint background hum as the scene drew me in. Each breath I took echoed in my ears, the air thick with anxiety. "Please, Nathan, just let me breathe," I heard Martha plead, her voice rising with emotion. The figure loomed, stony but resolute, and I felt the air thicken with tension. It was as if the universe had pressed pause, the weight of their conversation anchoring me in place. "Nobody is forcing you into anything, but you must understand how dangerous this is." Nathan's voice cracked through the space, laden with the remnants of fear. "You'll get hurt if you keep pushing back against this. This isn't a game." Martha remained silent, her shoulders trembling slightly. Each flicker from her body struck against my heart like an arrow. I wanted to break through, to assure her that she wasn't alone, that we could face it together. But fear gripped me, rooting me to the spot. I felt like a trespasser in this moment, caught between their unfolding decision. Out of instinct, I stepped forward, drawn to her like a moth to a flame. "Martha!" My voice, trembling and raw, swept through the air, igniting her gaze, yet there was an edge of hurt etched in her features, a softness twisted by confusion. As she turned, I felt my heart shatter, the light in her eyes dimmed, and for an agonizing moment, guilt intertwined with the hope that surged within me. What are you doing here?" she whispered, her voice laden with a mixture of fear and hope. "I came to find you. I don't care what Nathan thinks. You don't have to hide. We can talk." My words spilled out, desperate to bridge the chasm that lay between us. Suddenly Nathan stepped in closer, his face inches away from mine, hostility flaring. "Stay out of this," he spat, his voice low and venomous. "This is not about you. You don't understand what she's facing." In that moment, I saw the boiling conflict reflected in Martha's eyes, a struggle within her as tangible as the anger charged between us. She was caught in the middle of a storm, and just when I thought the walls might crack enough for my voice to reach her, a deafening sound cut through the air. An explosion shook the ground far too close for comfort, and panic instantaneous swept over the crowd as people began to bolt in every direction. My heart racing, I reached for Martha, but Nathan's grip tightened around her arm possessively, pulling her away from me. "Run!" I shouted at her, panic throwing my heart into knots, and she looked back at me, terror and uncertainty swirling in her gaze. Time stopped. In that fleeting second, the world erupted around us, chaos and confusion blossomed, turning the once crystallized moment into a swirling cyclone of danger. My pulse raced as I surged forward, desperate to reach her, but Nathan stood firm, a line drawn in the chaotic battleground. And then it happened. The crowd erupted in a frenzy, the sound of shattering glass, and the crack of something far more dangerous reverberated through the air. I watched as Martha's eyes filled with fear, a new battle igniting within. Martha! My voice rose over the chaos, filled with raw desperation as I pushed against the tide of fleeing bodies. I couldn't let her slip away again. I couldn't lose everything once more. But as the smoke began to thicken around us, cloaking the trembling pillars of the world within its shrouded embrace, I felt a sharp pain across my chest. A hand gripped my arm, pulling me back. Let her go. I screamed, but the words echoed into the void, drowned by the storm that had consumed us. Just as I thought she was lost to me once again, she turned in Nathan's grip, her features resolute and defiant. Time slowed. The light in her eyes, a fire that flickered against all odds, was enough to rip through the haze. "Nathan, stop!" she shouted, and I felt a surge of relief, that flicker of hope taking flame again. "Let me choose. Just for once, let me choose." As the smoke thickened and the world turned into confusion, the last thing I saw was the determination on her face, a reflection of the fight I had known in my own heart, her quiet plea reverberating in the storm. But before I could grasp that revelation, before I could respond, the world erupted again, and I was thrust into darkness, swallowed whole by the chaos unraveling around me. The darkness wrapped around me, oppressive and thick, as I tumbled through a tunnel of chaos. Each breath was a battle, the air a cacophony of panic and fear. I clawed my way back to consciousness, my mind struggling to break free from the weight of the void. As I blinked against the dimness, I became aware of muffled voices rising and falling like a distant tide. There were flashes of movement around me, shadows dancing in a world I couldn't fully comprehend yet. My fingers brushed the cool pavement beneath me, grounding me, and I slowly pushed myself into a seated position. Adrenaline coursed through my veins, igniting the fire of urgency to get to Martha. Where is she?" I croaked, the words barely escaping my lips, creating a hollow echo in the vague shadows. Panic surged anew, heavy and suffocating. Suddenly, a familiar figure loomed above, backlit by the flickering of distant flames. It was Rebecca, the girl who had pointed me toward Martha. Her eyes, usually full of warmth, were now shadowed with concern. "You were caught in the blast," she said, her voice strained. "You need to get up, we have to move. Did you see her? Is she okay?" I pressed, leaning into her, desperation clawing at my throat. I needed to know she was safe. Rebecca shook her head, a ghost of fear painted across her features. "I didn't see. Everyone scattered. Nathan took her. We have to go." The weight of her words crashed against me, and with it came a wave of sorrow and dread. I felt like I was falling backward into a chasm, each second stretching like an eternity. "No, we can't leave her," I whispered, tears pooling in my eyes, but Rebecca grabbed my hand tightly. "Listen to me. We can't help her if we're caught too." The urgency in her voice pierced through my panic, igniting a flicker of resolve. I nodded, heartbreak mingling with an unexpected determination. "Then let's find a way to get her back," I said, the resolve hardening my voice. We dashed out into the alley, the distant sirens wailing like lost souls echoing against the brick walls. The chaos of the streets had transformed into a haunting land scattered with debris and remnants of lives uprooted. People rushed past, driven by fear, but somewhere in the depths of my heart, the fire for connecting with Martha burned fiercely, not simply because of love, but also because of the shared struggles we both bore. Rebecca guided me, her confidence becoming a lifeline amidst my swirling thoughts. "We need a plan," she urged, her breath steady despite the turmoil around us. "There's a safe house nearby. We can regroup and strategize. There are others fighting against this. You are not alone." I hesitated, the hope flickering dimly like a candle in the wind. "Will they help us?" "More than you know," she assured me, squeezing my hand, her grip a lifeline that tethered me back to purpose. As we moved deeper into the night, I caught whispers of kindness drifting through the air, offerings of hushed promises of sanctuary and solace. Each step felt heavy yet purposeful, the edges of hope slicing through my despair as I thought of Martha trapped in Nathan's grasp. The safe house appeared before us, worn yet resilient, a sanctuary built upon the shoulders of those resisting the darkness. Inside, the air buzzed with a low hum of determination, voices melding into a unified chorus of resilience. As we entered, a ragtag group of faces turned towards us, curiosity intertwining with shared pain. I opened my mouth to speak, but was cut off by an older woman, her eyes piercing yet soft, stepping forward. "You're seeking someone, aren't you?" "Yes, her name is Martha," I said, feeling the catch in my throat. She was taken. The woman nodded, her expression turning to one of understanding and resolve. "Well, do what we can. We won't let the darkness swallow her." Their kindness wrapped around me like a fragile cocoon, light piercing through the veil of uncertainty that had clouded my heart. And yet, just as the room buzzed with energy, a crash echoed from behind the door. Shock turned my blood to ice, and tension thickened the air. Someone had followed us. "Stay back!" Rebecca shouted, stepping in front of me protectively. The door burst open, and in stepped Nathan, fury etched across his features, accompanied by two others with grim expressions. "Looking for this?" he sneered, and behind him, Martha was shoved roughly forward, her blue hair disheveled, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and defiance. My heart dropped, the reunion a fragile thread in a storm of chaos. "Martha!" I shouted, reaching for her. "Don't come closer," Nathan warned, pulling her back, the violent edge of his voice laced with rage. "You've no idea what you're meddling with." Despite the fear coiling around my heart, I took a step forward, unwilling to let despair break me again. "Am not afraid of you." "Let her go." A reassuring hand gently squeezed my shoulder, grounding me against the storm. The older woman stepped forward, her presence radiating strength. "You don't have to fight this alone, Nathan. These people can help." But as those words hung in the air, a flicker of doubt flashed in Martha's eyes, fear mixing with something else, an unease that felt almost palpable. She turned subtly to Nathan, her body tense, as if caught in an impossible balance between two worlds, both of which held pieces of her heart. Then, the tiniest crack formed in her resolve, and dread flooded through me. "Martha, please don't listen to him. We can escape together." The tension boiled over, the walls crumbling around us as I watched her hesitate, caught in a tempest between trust and betrayal. "You don't understand," she shouted suddenly, her voice breaking, and then with a gasp, she dropped the bombshell. "I'm meant to be a part of this. I can't leave." Time froze, holding the weight of her words as they crashed like thunder against my heart, drowning my hope in a turbulent tide. And as Nathan's smirk widened, everything spiraled, the world blurring at the edges into a fear I had not known before. Betrayed, haunted, and grasping at the remnants of what was left, I realized that this battle was far from over, but what I didn't know was if I had lost her for good, or if the flickering spark of hope would somehow light our path back to one another amidst the rising storm. The shadows of the room danced erratically as urgency filled the space, the air heavy with tension. Nathan's grip on Martha tightened, his expression a mask of dominance, tainted with malice. My heart raced as Martha's pleading gaze flickered between us, each second stretching into eternity like the fragile thread we now balanced upon. "Martha, you don't have to do this," I shouted again, every word a desperate call against the darkness threatening to consume us. "Please." Her voice trembled, the power of her choice radiating a vulnerability that tugged at my very core. "This isn't just about you and me anymore. Nathan's right, this is bigger than any of us." The admission sliced through my heart, the resonance of despair echoing around the cramped room. It felt as if the walls were closing in, trapping my breath, and smothering any remnants of hope. Struggling against the tide of emotions rising within me, I took a step forward, practically daring Nathan to stop me. I could no longer let fear dictate our fates. But Martha, what if it's not your choice at all? What if you've been manipulated into believing that? I pressed, hoping to breach the veil of the fear that clung to her like a shroud. Martha's eyes blinked slowly, and for a brief moment, I caught a glimmer of hesitation, the flicker of what we used to have a friendship forged through laughter and vulnerability. I can't just walk away from this, there are lives at stake, she argued, her voice rising, but with each part of her assertion, I sensed the fierce battle brewing inside her. But what I felt most deeply was the realization of how far our paths had diverged, how the choices we made seemed to carve separate destinies into our very souls. Suddenly, a thought hit me. What if this isn't about just you being part of this fight, Martha? What if it's about finding yourself beyond the roles others have thrust upon you? At those words, an almost imperceptible shift occurred within her. Nathan huffed in frustration, his grip still secure, but faltering as Martha's eyes shifted, the inner turmoil wrestling against the forces pulling her toward the darkness. "You're wrong," Nathan yelled, his voice laced with urgency tinged with fear. "You belong here. You can't leave." The tension crackled like electricity, and I felt the spark of a fight igniting in my chest. "But you're wrong, too," I challenged, the fire inside me swirling into a tempest of determination which propelled the words out. "You cannot own her. None of us can own another person. Love isn't about control, it's about freedom. It's about soaring together, not as captor and captive." Rebecca stood beside me, her spirit alight with fierceness, echoing the rallying cry I felt deep within. "You can't force someone to choose you over their own self. Martha, your freedom matters." The room filled with an intensity of pressure unlike any I'd ever experienced, a threshold poised on the brink of something monumental. Martha's walls began to crack, the layers of fear peeling away to reveal the heart underneath, bright and yearning, desperate to break free of the chains that had bound her for too long. "Is this how you want to live?" I pressed gently, my voice softer but firm. "Shrouded in fear? Is that the legacy you wish to uphold? You are allowed to choose your own path. Please remember who you are, what you mean to the world, to me." In that moment, we locked eyes again, and I saw it in awakening. The flicker of her forgotten light began to illuminate the shadows that had enshrouded her lately. "I don't want this," she gasped, her voice rising above Nathan's protests, her once terse features softening as the tempest within her roared to life. "I want to choose my own fight." That realization ignited a cascade of emotion within me, and the room seemed to pulse with the hope we were cultivating. I could see others began to echo her sentiment, moving forward. "Let her go!" someone shouted, a united front forming against Nathan's ruthless chaos. Then, in a moment that felt as if time had unfurled its wings, there was an unfathomable shift. "You don't have to do this, Martha." Nathan stuttered, confusion creeping into his bravado, finding himself outmatched by the solidarity building around us. She drew a deep breath, pulling strength from the collective spirit rising within the room. Martha's voice emerged, steady and resonant, a profound declaration that echoed through the souls of those assembled. "I choose me. I choose freedom." And in that pivotal moment, Nathan's grip faltered, releasing the hold he had on her. The power dynamic shifted, love becoming a guiding force rather than a weapon to wield. I surged forward, reaching out to her. As our hands met, fingers intertwining, I felt the infinite connection return, the warmth radiating through me like the soothing light of dawn breaking through a long-held night. But just as the hope surged, Nathan's eyes flashed with fury, a twisted knee clawing at his insides. "You'll regret this," he spat, but there was a vulnerability in his tone, a realization that power is meaningless if not based on love and mutual respect. "Not as long as we're together," Martha responded firmly, her voice now carrying the strength of our unyielding friendship, the bonds forged not just through time, but hardened in trials faced. Rebecca stepped forward, her presence fortifying, as she raised her voice for the group. "Let's end this cycle here." A ripple of agreement reverberated through the crowd, a tension released and replaced with a fierce collected determination. The courage of vulnerability filled the room. Just when I thought we might finally rise together, the door burst open again. But this time it wasn't Nathan, it was a swarm of others holding candles, banners of resilience aloft, faces illuminated with defiance. "We stand with you," they chanted, a chorus of shared humanity arising from the depths of despair, illuminating the corners of the room long overshadowed by fear. The weight of anguish ebbed, replaced with fervor and joy. A wave of solidarity swept through us. Hands reached out, grabbing one another's, forming a chain of support to encircle Martha and me as we stepped forward together. I was filled with deep gratitude. Our shared pain would not go unrecognized. "Martha," I whispered, each word laden with emotion. "Whatever happens next, we'll face it together." Her eyes shimmered, reflecting a mix of gratitude and love. "Together," she affirmed, and I could have sworn that we stood taller, our hearts intertwined, tethered to a flame of hope reborn amidst the aftermath of chaos. In that sacred shelter, surrounded by a gathering of hearts united as one, I understood that while storms may come and go, it was in the eye of those storms, the moments of choice, where we would find the courage to create our own paths. And as the flames flickered higher around us, a testament to the power of connection, the final words escaped my lips. "In a world riddled with darkness, let us ignite the light." In unison, voices surged forth, echoing through the cogs of time, weaving together dreams anew. In that moment, having faced vulnerability and fear, I found purpose in the journey ahead, a love that could weather any storm as we embraced our freedom together.